workshop meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Monday, August 12, 2019, beginning at 4 p.m. in the Boardroom Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District, 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas. At this meeting may be discussion of the board on items and a subject listed below, which is, we go to item 2, discussion of House Bill 3 gain updates, composition plan adjustments for the 2019, 2020, and 2019 tax rate. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Mrs. Richards and Mr. Miller will discuss House Bill 3 gain and proposed compensation adjustments and tax rate considerations. Additionally, Moak and Casey and Associates will present on a tax rate analysis via video conference. Ms. Richards and Mr. Miller will proceed with the presentation at this moment.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, and thank you, Mr. Suarez and Board of Trustees. Tonight, joining us also via video conference is Mr. Josh Haney with Moak Casey and Associates, Mr. Joe Wisnowski with Moak Casey and Associates, and Mr. Kevin O'Hanlon with the law firm of O'Hanlon, Demarath, and Castillo. As we begin today's presentation, we will be referring to the House Bill 3 calculated gain, the proposed compensation plan adjustments for 2019-20, and the tax rate. House Bill 3 was passed by the 86th Legislature and signed by Governor Greg Abbott on June 11, 2019. House Bill 3 provides for school finance reform, property taxes, and staff compensation. HB 3 created spending requirements related to compensation for teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses, and other non-administrative full-time staff. Additionally, HB 3 compressed the district's M&O, or maintenance and operations tax rate. On June 17, 2019, the board approved compensation plan based on a projected HB 3 gain of $16 million. Additional guidance has been provided on the new data elements required by HB 3, and the calculated gain is reflecting an amount of $18,373,168. Out of the $18,373,168, 30% of that equals $5,511,950, and 70% of that equals $12,861,218. When we look at the HB 3 requirement, it is asking for us to distribute the 30% into two groups. That 30% again is $5,511,950. 75% of that amount is to be allocated to teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses, and that amount is $4,133,963, and 25% is to be allocated to other full-time staff, excluding administrators. That amount is $1,377,988. And now when we move on to the proposed compensation adjustments.
Good afternoon. So House Bill 3 did many things, and two things that it did is increase the minimum salary schedule. The average increase was $7,414. McAllen ISD pays above the minimum salary schedule at all levels. Number two, it required 30% of the additional funds to go towards compensation adjustments. As we talked about, 75% of the 30 goes towards teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. The requirement is pay must be differentiated for teachers, librarians above 5 years of service. So that's one thing we must do. The second part, 25% of the 30% to go towards all other employees except administrators. And that distribution of the fund is locally determined. So there's two different requirements there. Current recommendations are based on all employees who are on our team are important, and their key roles are critical to the success of MISD. We need to ensure salaries are competitive. Externally, we want to be able to recruit highly qualified people to ensure they're a qualified applicant, best qualified applicants in McAllen. Internally, of course, we want to retain our great people, keep employees, and provide career advancement opportunities. Looking at teachers and librarians, they're paid on the teacher-librarian scale. At their minimum, the new proposed is for a 0-year teacher, $49,800. The maximum for 20-year is proposed $60,570. This increase that you see on the slide right there, back in June 17th, the board approved for 1 to 5 year $1,850 increase. 6 to 12 years, $2,050 increase. 13 to 19 years, $2,250 increase. And 20-plus years, $2,450 increase. We're proposing to do an additional $1,150 across the board to give a total increase for 1920 school year for 1 to 5 year teachers, $3,000. 6 to 12, $3,200. 13 to 19, $3,400. And 20-plus, $3,600. This is an average increase of at least 6.19. As you'll see on the slide, most of them are up in the 6.2, 6.3 increase for their tiers. Counselors and nurses are going to be paid 4.5% of the pay grade midpoint. Hourly and auxiliary is 5.5% of the pay grade midpoint. All other staff and administrators are 4.5% of the pay grade midpoint. I want to point out for the counselors and nurses, this increase, if you're a counselor on a 203 day, you're going to see an increase on your daily rate of $15. If you're a 207 day, $16, and the nurses are going to see a $13 daily increase for their daily rate.
How many days is that, 203?
203 for counselors. We have counselor leads, there's 207 days for those 3 individuals, and nurses are 201, sir. That's it.
Moving on, the next slide illustrates how the funding has been allocated by each of the 3 groups. The first group are the teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. The House Bill 3 requirement is reflected in the blue of $4,133,963. In addition to that, the district incorporated an additional $956,939, which is coming out of the 70%. The fringe benefits associated with the total compensation is $669,095, also out of the 70%. And we did have an increase in the employer health insurance contribution, which amounted to $203,060, and again, that coming out of the 70%. So that is a total of $5,963,013. For the next category, which is other staff, not including administrators, the House Bill 3 requirement was $1,377,988. In addition to that, the district has added $469,025, which is coming out of the 70%. The fringe benefits associated with that compensation is $77,337. And again, the increase in the employer contribution to health insurance is $157,476, for a total of $2,081,826. The final group are administrators. They are not included as part of the requirements for House Bill 3, and that is entirely coming out of the 70%. And for administrators, that amounted to compensation of $419,865. The fringe benefits associated with that are $68,691, and the employer health insurance contribution increase amounted to $14,784, for a total of $503,340, giving us a grand total of $8,548,179. Now, as we look at the proposed compensation plan adjustments, we'll notice that on June 17th of 2019, the board approved total compensations of $4,979,807. The proposal that will go to the board on August 26th will be for an additional $3,193,096. And that'll be a total of $8,172,903. If we include the health contribution, that was $375,276, which all combined will total $8,548,179.
Are you going to ask save questions, or can we?
You can ask.
Okay, well, going back to the original June proposal we had, 16 million?
16 million, yes,
And the
sir.
number ended up being 18,370,
Yes, sir.
an additional 2.3 million.
Yes, sir.
But the number you just read is 3,000,002. Where'd the extra money come from?
You're talking, is it on slide 8 that we're referring to, or is it another slide?
We dipped into the 70%.
The 70%, yes, sir. So if you go,
Because the additional 2.3 million is about 12%, 13%?
if you,
Pardon me, and then you're being able to give an additional 30% proposed adjustment, so it's coming out of the 70%.
yes, and this slide is the one that reflects that. It's slide number 7. The dark blue is actually the HB3 requirement, which was the 5 million, the 5,511,950. So the dark blue reflects the 30% requirement for the two groups. The green represents additional compensation, and that is coming out of the 70%, as well as the fringe benefits and the health insurance.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
I have some questions. On page 11, under the first column, it says approved June 17th, 2019. The number 3071244, where do you
On
get that?
slide 11?
Slide 11, page 11?
Okay. Did you want to flip through there?
This one right here.
Oh,
So the teachers, the 3071244 that says we approved, so if you add that number with the 78, with the 99, with the 50, in our, back in our budget workshops, the amount that we agreed to, that we voted on, was a total increase of 3640927. But, and for the teachers, it was 3.4. So there's a shortage of 300. Sorry. There's a shortage of 328,956. And I think what I'm going to do is, I did some Excel spreadsheets, and so I'm going to hand everybody some so you can kind of follow along with my rationale. Let me hand them. I'll just pass them. There's a scenario 1 and scenario 2 that I want to speak to, but that way when you see the numbers, you'll see what I'm talking about.
so what we did is, when we went back to recalculate this, we did go back into what we considered our 3 buckets, which was the teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses being 1 bucket, the other staff, excluding administrators, being the 2nd bucket, and administrators being the 3rd bucket. So when we went in there, we went back in there to recalculate with the assistance of our Department of Technology to make sure we had the proper count for those groupings, those 3 groupings, and so there may have been an adjustment. I know in speaking with some of our calculations, the first number probably reflects a district-wide teacher, librarians, counselors, and nurses.
It has a total of 1731. Yeah, it has 159, well, you know what, let me wait until you get to district-wide.
Yeah.
So that was district-wide. When it comes to House Bill 3, that is in reference to the the state funding, which will include your state comp, your bilingual, your special ed, and your career technology, and your general fund, which is our regular teachers and regular staff. And that number more than likely included staff in our federal programs. So as we realized that, we had to go back and readjust to take any federally funded staff off of that listing, because their federal funds will take care of those compensations, and that left a little bit more money to allocate for this particular group.
So what is the total number of teachers? It was 1592. What is the total number of teachers?
On 1592, 1402 of that 1592 is the local funds 153 through 159,
Which
Okay,
are our
and-
state
So-
funds,
And librarians, I have it at 33. What's librarians?
33,
all 33.
And counselors, I have 70,
68,
68. And nurses, I have 36.
35.
Okay, because I could not get my numbers to match.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Having said that, and this is a little bit awkward coming coming to you, because I'm going to argue to you why I don't want to give administration the raise that you're talking there. Let me start by saying, a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of board members on this board went to Austin. They picketed, they held signs, they fought, they had meetings with senators, representatives. The senators, state legislators met for a very, very long time, and they were very purposeful in their Senate Bill 3. And they wanted to include teachers, nurses, counselors, and librarians. I don't think they did all this work to come back for local school boards to mess it up. And that their intent on that money was to go to that group. And then the second group was the non-administrative full-time. That's one reason that I want to give you these different scenarios of why the additional 2.3 should be divided between the classes of the 1 through 20. My second rationale for that, and if you look at my reasons, one scenario is the raises that is the same amount that you gave, which is the, what is it, 4160 total. But the other raise that I have on there, scenario 2, is giving a complete 2.3 million to the teachers. And what I did is I went to all the surrounding school districts in the valley, and I calculated the percentage between the 0-year teacher to a 20-year, and I calculated the percentage, the difference. And most of them are at 20% to 30% to even 50%. Harlingen is at 50% because they value the teacher who's been in the district for over 20 years. They've been to 20 years of trainings, 20 years of learning. They're learned, they're valued. What also though, when you're 20 years a teacher, you're also older and you also have more bills. You have kids in college, you have a house. I mean, your cost of living is also so much higher too. Also, when you retire, it's a thank you. When you retire, you're retiring out as the highest amount possible, and the state is saying to you, thank you so much for what you've done over your 20 years for our students. And so because of that, I think that our local school boards, we really need to hold the ground and keep the 2.5% that was recommended in June for the administration and central office. But I think that remaining 2% that you want to bump it up to the 4.5, it should go back, and 100% of this new money that we found, the 2.3, should go to teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. And the way that I figured out my scenario is it would give 5.8%. It would be a little bit less to a first-year teacher, but it would give the 20-year teacher a 7% increase. So the way that I did it is it would give a 1 to 5-year teacher. I'm sorry, if you're looking at scenario 2, you should be looking at scenario 2. I gave you scenario 1, scenario 2. If you look at it the way I did, you're giving a first-year teacher $2,650. So the difference is $800 right now. I'm sorry, let me say, yours is $1,150 across the board. I'm sorry. I'm saying $800 for the first. I'm saying $1,300 for the 6th. I'm saying $1,600 for the 13th, and I'm saying $2,300 for the 20. It gives that 20-year teacher now a difference of $4,750. It gives the 13-year teacher a difference of $3,850. It gives a 6-year teacher, it's in orange if you're following, it gives a 6-year teacher $3,350, and it's less than what you recommended on the new teachers. It gives it $2,650. But it's the percentage is 5% for the new teacher, 0 to 5 years, but it's almost 8% difference. And what that does is it makes us bold. It makes us lead. It's McAllen ISD will be leading the way, and the rest of the school districts around can follow suit on what we're paying our teachers, really from the 13-year point on to the 20-year point. If you look at the way that you did it, the 1,150, 1,150, 1,150, 1,150, the only difference between a 1-year teacher and a 12-year teacher is $200. How can we look and say that the only difference between a 1-year teacher and a 12-year teacher is $200? And so when you look at it like that, and then when you say a 1-year teacher to a 20-year teacher, the difference is only $800. And the difference is only $600 and $400. And so I really think that we need to push it, and we have an opportunity right now with that 2.3 extra gain that we're allowed to adjust. I really would like for administration to go back and recalculate the numbers, because my numbers are off, because I could not figure out where you got that 3.071. But I think that if we gave 100% of this new money to that one category, teachers, librarians, counselors, nurses, I think that sends the right message. And I think that's what our state legislators wanted us to do. And I think that makes us bold. And I think that makes us, we're not dropping the ball. That's all I have to say.
We can certainly look at this. Did you want us to continue the PowerPoint, or?
Almost definitely.
Well, I mean,
Okay, and we
yeah.
can come back to see, okay.
Maybe you have another copy. Just draw that out.
Yeah, I gave, there's like 15 copies, so. There's a scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario
Yes.
2 is what I'm advocating.
Yes, I've got both.
Scenario 1 is, the scenario 1 still gives the 4.5 to administration. And all it does is it changes the amounts of the 0-year teachers, 20-year teachers, to give the 20-year teachers a much higher amount. I'm sorry, I should have said that. Scenario 1 leaves the 4.5% that you're recommending right now, but it gives the 0-year teachers $710, and it gives the 20-year teachers $1,800. So it makes the 18-year teachers 4,250, and it makes the 5-year teachers 2,560. That's keeping in alignment with giving the administration the 4.5 that you're recommending.
And it would still maintain the 5.5 for the auxiliary and hourly,
Yes.
auxiliary and
Yeah.
hourly staff?
Yeah.
It would just be the
On my
teacher,
Excel
okay.
spreadsheet it did, but you're the numbers person, so I
Right.
would like for you to go back and see if that's possible.
Okay.
Just a question,
we can
follow up. Is there a, can you plug that number in? Do we have a formula already set up that those numbers?
No, we actually set them through,
Okay, thank you.
I do want to say something real quick before we continue with that, and that is that, when I first got on this board, there was a real problem with what the first-year teacher and the 20-year teacher and the salary adjustments, and there was no decompression. And I think we fought for 3 years to decompress it. And although we're not at every district, as competitive as every district, we're not gonna be. We don't get the money that every other district gets, so we have to take those things into consideration. But the second thing too is, the last thing we wanna do is fall behind on attracting new teachers to come to McAllen ISD. And that is an important factor. If you look at our past 2 teachers of the years, that just finished when they're new teachers, and we ask ourselves, if we were on the bottom of the totem pole, would they have applied to teach at McAllen ISD? And I know the argument, some say, well, there's not a lot of new teachers, but that's fine. That means that number doesn't impact that many new employees. But if you fall behind, and it's gonna be hard to catch up. And that's what we're seeing now with the 20-year plus teachers, is that for so long, they were combined together, we're way behind. And it's gonna happen again if we do that. But that's not for me to decide. You can plug in those numbers, give us an alternative. I know that your staff has worked hard. They've looked at every alternative. I know that we've even gone beyond the 30% and tapped into the 70% to try to make every person valuable. Because I believe that every person in this district, from the custodian to the bus driver to our principals, are an important factor. And, you know, we're successful as a district because we work as a team. And not to say that those scenarios are wrong, but I'm just saying, let's hear you out. And there's a lot of reasoning why things were done the way they were done. Let's hear it out. And that's what we're here to do, to discuss, to see what the best alternative is. So if you can continue with the presentation.
If I could just, one thing, I didn't give, at the very bottom, you'll see in red, I did compare with surrounding school districts what the starting salary would be to that point. In scenario 1, in keeping with the administration having the 4.5, but I changing the amount, the weight, so that the 20-year teachers get more, our starting salary would be $51,420. It would make us number 1 in the district. The proposed way that I really want to do it, it would make our starting salary $54,070. So we, either way, even if I went lower, it still makes us the highest for starting teachers, so we could still recruit new teachers as well, because I do agree that we do need new teachers, but I really think that we need more emphasis on the tenured teachers. So I want to interrupt again.
Hello? Sam.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Sadhu.
I really would have liked to have heard the whole presentation, but the first question I have, was any of this information presented to the administration before? Because those of us on the committee, which when we met with the administration, was Mr. Vela and myself were able to make that meeting. None of this was even presented. I would have liked to have had those discussions with the administration. I did share my concerns, which are very similar to Trustee Aristela's, but I was waiting until the presentation was entirely done. But the reality is, and this is the question I have, when you're talking about the $18,373,168 I'm sorry, 18,373,168 under House Bill 3, and it's listed as a quote gain. Is that really a gain to our budget? No. I mean, really, that's the first question I have. Since you already presented on your slides, I kind of want clarification. Is that really coming to the district, brand new money gain for our budget?
Nope.
Mrs. Richards?
Yes,
Or
sir.
Dr. Gonzalez?
And I think our PowerPoint will go over that. We really do know that our ADA went down as we projected this coming year. It went down 656 in ADA. That's a little over $4 million. So we're contending with probably a gain smaller than maybe some of our surrounding school districts. And 18 million does sound quite a bit, and I think these next few slides will kind of show where those distributions are and what we really have left to work with when we're done.
And I hear you, but some things are already out there, and I think we can, you've already shown some slides. I want to, that slide was shown and that figure was put out there, and yeah, you're going to clear it up. But the point of the matter is, last year, the Board of Trustees approved of $242,461 and 487. This year, we approved on the 20th, in June, a $239 million budget, which is roughly $2.8 million less than the year before.
Yes, sir.
Am I off on, am I not, right there to start with?
No, sir. And that included,
Yeah, we have a decrease of 3.1% from where we were last year.
right.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And that gain that you indicated, or that loss, is mainly due to the loss in the ADA.
Right. But again, going back to the HB2 and what PEA put together, and it's on their website, and it listed all the school districts. And for McAllen, it was showing a difference of 9.688. Now, this was back in April. And at that time, it was showing an ADA difference. Because a lot of folks are thinking that $6,100 per person across the board. And every school district's different. And for us, I think we were at 5,176 last year per person, ADA. Is that correct, or
Yes, sir.
close to it?
Yes, sir. 5,760 was our allotment last year per ADA.
And this year, per ADA, per child.
Yes, sir.
And again, what I'm seeing is that, at least in April, and maybe it's changed, it was roughly 467,000 additional per child was what the state was going to allow under HB3.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What's the exact figure?
I think you'd asked what the exact figure is.
6,160, is that the number you were asking for?
Yes.
The
No,
basic
that-
allotment is 6,160 versus the 5,760.
Okay.
So $400.
Okay.
It was $400 more. So what's the total ADA per child this year under HB3?
22,205.
Okay, that's the ADA that they're using, right?
TA was using the 22,705, 200 more than we did internally.
Right, but how much is the ADA, the amount per child that we're supposed to be getting under the House Bill 3?
$6,160.
Now, since this has already been discussed, and we talked about it in the committee the other day, I believe that HB3 was attempting to go to the higher end performing teachers, the 20 plus, looking at the statute. And while we did 4 tiers, it looks like our neighboring districts are going with 2 tiers. I still believe that higher number is important for the 20 plus. And that was over $4,000 in fact, it was $4,050. The other is, we're right now at 4,998, and that's with the decompression that we have done over the previous years, and we moved up from 47,580, a difference of 2,220 for starting salary. Is that correct? For a new teacher in McAllen ISD.
49,800.
Say it again?
49,800 is what we're proposing. What was approved back in June was 49,100 for zero-year teachers.
Right, but that's an increase from last year of 47,580, is that correct?
47,750 last year.
So how much more are we adding? Maybe that's the way I need to ask it. How much are we difference now have we approved
3,000.
from last year June to this year June for a starting teacher at McAllen ISD?
3,000.
No.
2,050. 2,050.
That's how much more.
Wait,
And I think that's a fair figure to kind of look at as we look at the higher tiers. And maybe we need to rethink this instead of 4 tiers. Maybe we need to be looking at this as 2 tiers, at the most 3 tiers, with a higher percentage going above the 20-year. And I believe that the amount that we've already allowed for in June for all others, with the exception of the 30%, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about anybody, the 116 individuals that are staff administrators, the 10 categories, that we leave it at the figure we'd already approved into. And I think those two dynamics, as we continue to have our discussions, will positively impact the starting pay, and I think it should be around the 51,200 to the 51,400, and the upper pay being around an additional 4,000.
House
Or
Bill,
I should say a total, 1,000 instead of 3,600, another 400 for each one.
yes, the House Bill 3 requirement was to recognize those teachers with 6 years of experience or more. That's why many school districts only have 2 tiers, which is the 1 through 5 and the 6 years plus. And we did break it down into the 4 tiers for McAllen.
Right. And I'm trying, and again, as pure as I can make it sound or be, the more we're thinking about it, and we're having this discussion in this workshop, that's what it's for. I think we ought to stick to the House Bill 2 statute as closely as we can, which would put us back in the 2-tier, and that may be a better approach for us to have, because I'm still real concerned that on the top end, that has not widened enough going forward. And I agree with Trustee Suarez when he says if we're not very, very careful going forward, this could put us in a predicament in the high end. But I think we need to want to attract new individuals at the low end and get that figure edited, and look at the top end as well, and hold on to those a little bit longer. But more important, I think in the longer term, that helps them on the TRS side. As they move towards retirement, after putting in 35, 40 years with McAllen ISD, it puts them in a much better place. So they leave with a feeling fulfilled that they met all our obligations moving forward. So I know we got more slides to cover, but since some things have already been said, I think given the slides that we've already talked about, given the budget we've already approved, I thought we needed to show that our budget's not increasing because of HB3. The per student on ADA is, but they're not using our membership, they're using ADA in our projections moving forward. And luckily at McAllen ISD, we did not figure any gains for this year again, but we already have seen a positive gain in several hundred students, new students. But again, that's membership. We still got to attend class to get the ADA. So that's why, Mr. President, thank you for the time. I thought I should bring up my concern. Thank you.
In all fairness, I'm going to yield and let Mrs. Richards finish the presentation, then we have any other questions.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, again, with this slide, we do have a gain of the $18,373,000. The 30% requirement amounted to $5,511,950, leaving us for the 70% an amount of $12,861,218. Out of that, the amount we paid in compensation above the 30% was $2,172,397, and the compensation for administrators, which came out of the 100%, which came out of the 70%, is $488,556, which left $10,200,265 available for all funds. Now we're going to look at this by program. So we do have the Career College Military Readiness Program, Career Technology Education, Bilingual special education and state compensatory. Calculated under HB3 for special programs is $9,777,410. That left the general fund $12,705,966. To that, we had to deduct the amount of tax collections we are losing as a result of the tax rate compression for maintenance and operations, and we had some adjustments to some of the data elements. The net of that is a reduction of $4,110,208, leaving $8,595,758 for the general fund. And again, that totals out to $18,373,000. Then based on the compensation plan, we do have what was approved in June of $4,979,807. What we were proposing today was amounting to $3,193,096 for a total of $8,172,903. So when you take the 18 million minus the 18.1 for compensation, that was going to leave a balance of $200,265. For the special programs, that allows them $4,703,059 to spend on other operating expenditures. And you'll see the breakdown there. The largest component on there is state compensatory, with availability for regular operational needs of 2.5, almost 2.6 million. The next largest group is a new funding element, the CCMR, which is 974,000, and they work their way down. For the general fund, that left 9.6 million, minus the reduction we're going to have to process for tax collections of and the data elements of 4.1 million, leaving the general fund with a balance of almost 5.5 million for a total of 10.2 million. Now, we do see that 5.5 in the general fund, and the recommendation from administration was going to be to utilize about 2.2 of that for, 2.2 of that for a refresh for Chromebooks for students and MacBooks for teachers and some other electronic devices, and about another 2 million for the maintenance tax note, leaving about 800,000 available once those two large items were approved and budgeted for. Now we're planning to move on to the tax rate, and on there we are saying that we currently have an M&O tax rate of $1.15.5 and a tax rate for interest and sinking of 0. The maintenance and operations tax rate has been compressed to 1.0586 per $100 property value, and this compression resulted in a loss of current tax collections of approximately $4.5 million. Administration is recommending the proposed tax rate of $1.0586 for maintenance and operations and $0.0942 for the debt service or interest and sinking fund, decreasing the combined tax rate from 1.1550 to 1.5028 per $100 property value. And at this point, we do have Moat Casey and Associates presenting their PowerPoint on the tax rate analysis.
Hello, this is Josh from Oak Casey. Is the feedback all right with y'all?
Excuse me, Josh, I forgot one more slide, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
And we were just going to let you know that on this coming Friday, we're planning to post our notice of public meeting to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate. And we do have the M&O tax rate there at $1.0586 and the INS or school interest and sinking fund at $0.0942 on there.
And before he starts, I just want to, I didn't see it on his slides. Where are we with our tax rate compared to everybody else? Are we still one of the lowest?
Yes, we are.
Right.
Well, yes, as we began, everybody was compressed.
Right.
Yes, but we still are.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Haney, you can begin. I believe you have control of the PowerPoint.
I think you may have to relinquish control.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
Chrome. This one. And stop presenting. There we go. And now he should be able to present.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, can you guys see the full screen there?
We see you.
All right, is that better?
No, we're still seeing you.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but
Do an interpretive dance here so you guys can get a sense of your tax rate options. Huh. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, how's that?
perfect.
Yes. If we could just change that to full screen, Mr. Heaney, thank you.
There we go. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so back in July, Ms. Richards asked Moat Casey to sort of do a repeat analysis on what we did, I believe, a few years back, looking at two different revenue options, two different tax rates for McAllen ISD, and the two specific scenarios that your district requested was outlined there. The first one is at the compressed HB3 rate of $1.056 with no INS rate. And then the second scenario is at $1.0586 with an INS rate of 0.942. And I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes. Yes, okay.
Yes.
What up, Miss Richards, or the guys, everyone in the room there? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, all right. And just to kind of recap a little bit about what HB3 did, I know Ms. Richards went over this a little bit, but it increased the basic allotment from 5140 to 6160. It created a list of additional allotments and also increased the existing weights for allotments that were already on the books, including the comp ed, the bilingual, special ed, and then it created the new early education allotment and moved to current year values for determining district's local share. It also redefined recapture. It sort of simplified the equation to be local revenue in excess of entitlement. And it did add more state dollars for NIFA, which is its operational cost for new instructional facilities, and increased the state appropriation from $26 million per year to $100 million. And then, as Ms. Richards discussed, it compressed M&O tax rates and created mechanisms for automatic compression in the future. And just to kind of quickly walk through this, the first dollar of the 1819 rate is compressed to 93 cents. The next 6 golden pennies remain unchanged, but the yield is different under HB3. It's 98.56 per penny per watt. And then of the remaining 0.095 in McAllen ISD's 1819 tax rate, 2 pennies get shifted to golden pennies, so you get that higher yield. The remaining 0.075 gets compressed by approximately 64.8% and reduces those pennies to 0.04862. And those pennies get a higher yield now under HB3 of 49.28 per penny per watt. There are 4 main ways to get facilities funding under state law. House Bill 3, as I mentioned, only really touched the NIFA, which is operational expenses related to new instructional facilities. It didn't make significant changes to IFA, EDA, or the hold harmless there on bullet number 4, the additional state aid for homestead exemption. I'm just going to quickly walk through these just to kind of put the results in context for y'all. So the first one is the instructional facilities allotment, and it's a facilities program that guarantees an amount of combined state and local revenue per ADA per penny of INS effort. There were no additional IFA appropriations this past session. And under this program, money can only be used for construction or renovation of instructional facilities, and districts must apply, and there's a prioritization given to districts with lower property values and less debt outstanding. For statute, the guaranteed yield under this program is $35 for 1920. Moving on to EDA, or the existing debt allotment. Under this program, it guarantees an amount of combined state and local revenue per ADA per penny of INS effort. For 1920, according to TEA, the guaranteed yield is estimated to be $38.10. The guarantee is on eligible debt that is not already receiving IFA assistance. And the program, there's no applications required and no award cycles like there is with IFA. But to be eligible, payment of existing bonds must have been made during the final year of the previous biennium, so during the 18-19 school year. And I touched on this a little bit, the new instructional facilities allotment. The details are outlined there. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it wasn't impacted by the scenarios that McAllen ISD staff asked Mo Casey to look at. And it's not tied to the INS rate or any debt obligation. And then the last bucket for facilities aid is the additional state aid for homestead exemption. That's a hold harmless related to the increased homestead exemption passed in the 2015 session. And it just holds harmless the lost INS tax collections that were a result of that homestead exemption increase. And then just real quickly before we get to the results, I'm going to talk about sort of the assumptions that we made when we were conducting this modeling exercise. In our conversations with district staff, we settled on the 2019 estimated T2 values, and this is just the property value that drives a lot of the funding that McAllen ISD receives. It's the basis of the local share for the on the M&O side, and we, based on your CAD values, we settled on a T2 value of 7.5, almost 7.6 billion, and that represents a 5.12% increase over 18. Like Ms. Richards mentioned earlier, we did anticipate some ADA decline, and for the 1920 school year, we're forecasting 20,504 ADA. Represents a 3.1% drop. We are anticipating for 1920 $6,806,000 in bond payments, and this is just the eligible bond payments used for state funding purposes, and that's a decline from the 18-19 amount of just over 30%. And we included this slide. It wasn't specifically, the scenarios you guys were considering were not impacting directly the T2 revenues, but we wanted, or the Tier 2 revenues rather. But we just wanted to include this for some context in light of the TRE that you had recently. So you can see, let's just focus on that column on the far right, the total Tier 2 revenues. You can see for 1920 in level 1, which is the golden pennies, you can see that your total revenue is increasing, and that's largely because of under House Bill 3, like I mentioned earlier, you got 2 new additional golden pennies, and then of course along with your property value increasing. And then on level 2 for the copper pennies, you can see that total revenue went down, and again, like I mentioned earlier, that's largely the result of that copper penny compression that occurred on those pennies. And this just kind of provides the all those numbers on a big picture. We did include a line there and for old law, that's what OL stands for, and that was from request from Ms. Richards and her team. This is just to kind of show what would have happened if HB3 did not pass, what y'all would have received at the Tier 2 level. So you can see under HB3, your Tier 2 revenues are $29,862,000. Had HB3 not passed, and there was no compression at the Tier 2 level, you would have received $31,915,000.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you. Tier 2, is for purposes of funding under the old law, the way it was used, it was for enrichment. And so
Right.
within that, is that correct? It was enrichment for the district. It was additional money for enrichment programs.
Right. Tier 2, it's another term for that. That's batted around a lot in enrichment pennies. So yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And those just like today still remain very targeted, but instead of it being in Tier 2, it's now merged together with and that's why it's called golden pennies on the Tier 1 side. They've shifted over, and they're giving us money. They're still targeted for GT, what used to be the house school law, and
Right.
some other programs for enrichment. They're still there that we still got to fund and can only fund those programs under the HB3. That didn't go away.
So all of the per student like program allotments that you're thinking of, like the GT on old law and like comp ed and bilingual, all of those are those allotments are under Tier 1. So that's sort of the basic level, the Tier 1 level. Now those counts do impact your Tier 2 revenues because they all go into WADA, but like your spending requirements, the 55% under HB3 for comp ed and bilingual and some of the other ones, those are all out of Tier 1. So this is all sort of, we're just focusing on the enrichment pennies, Tier 2, and that's what was impacted by the TRE. Whenever you decide, whenever you all elected to raise that rate, that was adding Tier 2 pennies.
Exactly. All it did was shifted it, and they become golden pennies. But we're no longer going to be requesting a drawdown on the WADA for those weights because it's now part of normal operation for the district and the monies that we'll receive.
Well, those monies were always for district operations. I mean, they went to the general fund. And this HB3 doesn't change that. They're still used for district operations.
Exactly, and that's the point. There's still those operations. But some folks are seeing the aggregate of this money and because of the percentages that are taken out of it, it still has an impact happening with those programs that were part of old law that was identified under Tier 2 for enrichment.
Right, and the reason I chose just to focus on Tier 2 is because in conversations with Ms. Richards, I knew she was going to be presenting sort of a more global view of the entire revenues of the district. So I just wanted to focus specifically on Tier 2, and because I knew you guys had a sort of mind on the TRE and kind of how that was impacted by HB3.
Exactly, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to bring clarity on my part. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Is it okay if I continue on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that kind of wraps up our assumptions that we made in our modeling exercise. I'm going to kind of walk through the additional facilities aid that McAllen might receive if it does decide to levy an INS rate. And so first off, with the IFA program, partly because of the switch to current year values that I mentioned earlier under HB3, now, and also McAllen's declining ADA, McAllen's property wealth per ADA puts it just above the threshold to receive IFA state aid, and you can see that that's kind of spelled out in the formula there on the screen. Based on our assumptions, that were described earlier, the per McAllen's property wealth per ADA is $36.93, and that compares to the IFA guaranteed yield of $35. And so we don't expect y'all to receive any state aid under that program. Next up is EDA. And like I mentioned earlier, the EDA guaranteed yield is $38.10. And of course, McAllen's property wealth per ADA is just under that. However, because of there was no INS rate in the previous year, that impacts the EDA state aid received in 1920, so then the INS collections in 1819. And so it kind of, we expect that to be, around $1,000, under $2,000 at the most for 1920 if the tax rate is levied. Next up is the additional state aid for the homestead exemption. And based off of the assumptions outlined earlier, we expect this to equal around $170,000 in state aid received if an INS rate is levied. And so looking at kind of the tax rate here, speaking with district staff, they, and based on the assumptions outlined earlier, an INS rate of 0.0942 would be enough to service its debt obligations in 1920. Adopting this rate would allow McAllen to fully fund its debt obligations out of INS revenues rather than relying on M&O revenues as it has in recent years. And this would result in a total tax rate, as Ms. Richards mentioned earlier, of $1.1528. And I think that's all we had prepared for y'all. If there's any other questions, I'm open to take those now.
So I just wanted to point out that as we move forward, House Bill 3 will not allow districts to propose tax swaps as we have in the past. They will be non-existent moving forward. And in addition to that, the compression we have this year of the M&O of $1.0586 will continue to compress as each year progresses because the compression continues. So that amount will just continue to decrease as we move forward. And I think Mr. Saldivar, when he was talking about the Tier 1 versus the Tier 2, in that Tier 1 is where we have the gifted and talented allotment, or we had in the high school allotment. Although the state is no longer funding us as the two separate elements, they are requiring us to fund it out of their regular allotment that they are now providing for the district. So they will no longer be separate line items. It's just part of the $6,160 that they gave us. So that's coming out of that pool of money also.
Hence, they cut one fund and give it.
Yes, yes, sir.
But it's my understanding when you get when the budget is, when we use the money, we code it, which we then that transfers as to how that money is drawn down to cover those costs. But we can only draw down for those costs in those areas that we're still required to provide to our students.
For gifted and talented and high school allotment, it'll come out of what they call the regular allotment, which is part of the $6,160 per ADA, the $20,504 in ADA. And I misspoke earlier. I think I said 22. It's $20,205.
And what other areas are we, again, required to use the funds in a targeted way and thank you for anything else?
It is with those special programs, and we had that in one of the slides, which was the CCMR, the Career College Military Readiness. It's bilingual, it's career technology, state compensatory, and special education. Those fundings are for those special programs, specifically for those student populations.
And so, if I may, if we then go to the next step and approve the new tax rate, what relief will our local taxpayers see as far as what the tax rate will be less to them?
It'll be going from the current total from a current total tax rate of $15.50 to $15.28. So there will be a slight reduction.
And, you know, somebody mentioned the TRE earlier, and so for all intents and purposes, the drawdown we would have received because of the TRE from the state is going to be different. And how we go forward if we again accept the recommendation to move it back to INS.
Yes, sir. Our recommendation is that INS becomes fully funded, self-funded.
And that would get us back on track to finish paying the debt from, 2003, 2004 on time and without any additional increase in taxes.
Without any additional total tax increase, yes, sir. The INS fund would be self-funded. It would take care of our payments through 2030, and that would allow us to free up some funding for the maintenance and operations because they no longer be transferring those funds from maintenance and operations to interest and sinking to assure that those debt obligations are paid.
And so once we go
With that,
through
Mr. Saliba,
2030 and
if-
pay the final bill on those bonds, the payment on those bonds, and then unless we have anything else come up, then at that time, that draw for that amount under the new tax rate will no longer be required the taxpayer to pay in their tax bill.
Correct, when they're fully paid off in 2030.
At this time, I'm gonna recess the workshop, open up the board meeting, and then come back to the workshop, just because it's 5:03. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so we're gonna
Yes, sir.
recess the workshop at 5:03. So at 5:04, we will reopen up the discussion of the workshop.
And as we look at the scenarios, Mrs. Aliceda said to us, on those scenarios, and I haven't looked at them a lot, but it would remain the 4.5% would remain the same, the 5.5% would remain the same in both scenarios. It's strictly looking at the teacher librarian scale. Is that correct on these two?
No, well, in scenario 2, the administration and central office stays the same at 2.5.
Okay.
And the only one that's raised is the teachers, librarians, nurses, counselors, and all non-administrative full-time in scenario 2. So what would be the next step then? Would we have another workshop between now and in 2 weeks when we have to vote on this? Or what do you recommend? What do you recommend, Dr.?
Yeah, we'd like to come back, reconvene as an administration, look at the numbers again, and come back to another workshop
Is
before
that
before
what the Board of Trustees would like us to do?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a good idea to take it straight into a board meeting with the administration making a recommendation without looking at it, because we have to look at the numbers closely. And I know that when we look at administration and the recommendation of going to a 2.5, the group that we're targeting when we say administrators is the executive leadership team. We're also saying principals, assistant principals, directors, executive directors, coordinators.
Not coordinators.
Not content coordinators?
Yes, it'll be
Coordinators
the
are
assistant
APs and
principals.
above.
Right, it'll be the assistant principals, the principals, directors, executive directors, internal auditor, chief of police, chief financial officer, assistant superintendents, associate superintendent, and the superintendent. There are 10 categories.
I understand, but I also understand without House Bill 3, there would be no raises at all. And the people that you just mentioned right now are the people that are in charge of budgets, and they're the people that didn't find any cost savings this past year. So without House Bill 3, we wouldn't have all this money. So that's why even more reason that I feel like we should really look at going into the category that state legislators spent so much time in making sure that we were purposeful in giving to that group.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. We'll discuss it and bring it back to a workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Haney, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If it's okay, I would move that the budget workshop be adjourned.
I second.
We have a motion on the floor, second. Any discussion? All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.